What's up? Do you want to live a good life? Do you just want to be happy, maybe successful? What do you need for a good life? Well, today in your luck, these existential stoic podcasts, we're going to talk about is reason really the key to a good life? I'm Randy. I'm Danny. My buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Yeah,
God, how can I
Danny.
get my own name wrong?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, this is an interesting one because, all these philosophers say that reason is so important. I think, therefore, I am. I'd rather be Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied or whatever it is. And yeah, what are your
Yeah.
feelings on
Well,
that, Danny?
well, that's why I was thinking about this topic because like studying ethics, like if you look, especially, I mean, in Western philosophy, but broadly speaking, like we've always kind of saw reason as a thing that put us above every other living thing, right? That made us special because we can think, consciousness, ability to reason, rationalize, all that stuff. And so philosophers forever really have been saying that that's the thing that really defines humanity, right?
Sure.
Kant called us rational beings. Aristotle called us rational beings, right? That's what defined us and made us unique and we're the source of our value. I mean, literally, it's the source of our value and stuff, in a lot of cases. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I find that interesting because we know that other people can think because we communicate with them and we can understand them communicating. But when we don't communicate with other people, how many times do you look at other people and you'd be like, are they retarded? Like that person clearly is not thinking. Like, what is going on? And I wonder, just because we can't communicate with animals or any other life forms, if they can actually
Well,
think
yeah.
and all this stuff, we just don't know. And we just think, well, because we can communicate with each other, we're clearly the highest life form. So let's just kill off everything else.
Yeah, it's kind of very like egoistic, isn't it, to think
Yeah.
that way? I mean, and we found that like intelligence is more, I think, a gradation than anything else. I mean, look at elephants, dolphins, I mean, the great apes. They're all wildly intelligent. They might not be on our level, but they have social organization, they have, thinking. They even use tools in some cases. Like,
Yeah,
you know, it's
that's true.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that, right? That if we don't understand someone, we immediately think that they're unintelligent, which is
Mm-hmm.
problematic.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting too, because like I always wondered, is like you get this impression, especially from like, oh man, from like Plato, Aristotle, the ancients, the Stoics. In some cases, you get this impression that a good life is all about being a rational person. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is something, the existentialists push back against a little bit, but other philosophers in more modern times have pushed back against, which is like, but there's a lot more to us than just reason, right? Like, yeah, thinking is critical to who we are, but there's also feelings, there's will, there's lots of other stuff that might also contribute to who we are. And is, should we really be emphasizing reason above all else, I guess, is like one way to maybe look at this. And is that really the key to living a good life? Or is that the key to, you know, I don't know,
It
inform me
reminds
or
me
something?
when you put it that way, it reminds me of what Marcus Aurelius was saying, where he's like, what are we? A body like a collection of blood and pus, or the air constantly coming and going? No, we're the rational part of us or the spiritual part of us that that sustains. And I guess when you look at it that way, yeah, it makes sense. But I mean, the reasoning part of us, I think, is responsible for a lot of modern diseases.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's like anything else, right? It can go both ways. It can be good or bad, depending on how it's used, I guess,
Hmm.
and the use you put it to. And it is interesting because I mean, I think there is that anybody that's like, I think you would probably agree with this, that anybody who pursues like, learning and stuff, like you end up valuing reason too, because you see like what you're capable of, learning new things, new skills, all that stuff. So there is a sense in which like it becomes an important source of value. But it is also interesting because it seems to exclude so much else of a human life by just focusing on reason. And even like in some cases, there's a suggestion of like everything else should be, Aristotle, I mean, pretty much directly says like, or Plato does too, that everything else about us, like our emotions and stuff, should be sort of guided by reason, so that we're never like led by any other thing besides the rational side of us. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because, is that I don't know, it's just weird. We are animals. So
Well,
is that really
okay, so where does the reason come from? Is it from the brain or is it from the mind or is it from somewhere else? Because if
Oh
it's the
God, yeah. So
brain, that's like a literal physical connection to the rest of your body. Like it's just a bunch of nerve cells that go throughout your entire body connected to everywhere. So the brain is part of the body. So then that would be part of emotions and feelings and different things like that too.
Well, now you're stepping into the other mud of this conundrum, right? Which is essentially,
See, I
all these
thought we were going
philosophers
to have
have
an answer
different.
by the end of this one.
No, we're not. No answers. Sorry. No, but like, well, like you point out there, right? These philosophers come from different traditions. Some of them believed in mind-body dualism. Some of them, had this conception of a soul, things like that. Some even like more modern, there's physicalism, which is they believe everything has a physical basis. So, your mind is just your neurons firing in the brain. And I think that can definitely influence maybe how you answer this question. Because if you think that it is just mind, if it's just gray matter, there's nothing different from that to distinguish it fundamentally from anything else. Because it's all just neurons firing, right? That's what's dictating everything we see, experience, feel, whatever, who we are. And so, yeah, maybe that does change it a bit or kind of knock reason down a little. I think in these older philosophers, they really thought that, who we are is that rational. Like, look at that Marcus Aurelius quote, right? Like, that is who we are fundamentally, right? That conscious thinking thing. And it's weird. It's weird because you get like, it's almost like the body's separated from us in some way. Like, that's not really us. That's just like the physical meat and potatoes, but
Yeah.
not the important bits.
Yeah, it doesn't. The other thing that I was thinking along these lines is like, can reason be right if it's led us down the wrong paths in so many ways? Like, if reason has led us to destroy the world for money, is reason right? Or like, there's another.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a whole bunch of like these mind body type courses right now, and so for the longest time,
Convenient.
I know, right? Convenient. Yeah. So for the longest time, uh, doctors thought that if they saw something on an X-ray or an MRI or a CT scan, that was the cause for pain in the body. Well, it turns out there's a number of studies now where they've taken groups of people who have no pain and groups of people who have pain, and then they've stuck them in X-rays, CTs, MRIs, and the same numbers of abnormalities come up on imaging, meaning that any of these radiographic or findings are completely uh, they're non-deterministic. You can't tell if somebody has pain or not based on what you're seeing from an image. And yet, the medical field is still doing tons of spine surgeries, which just,
Oh yeah.
they're
Super
not
dangerous.
working.
Yeah.
And crazy, dude, the crazy thing is, I heard this statistic the other day that the amount of money that they're making from this is equal to buying every person with chronic pain a Rolex every single year.
Oh
That's
yeah,
how
dude,
much
it's
money.
absurd how much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, because it's just ridiculous how much this crap costs too.
But
You
it's
go
like
in for,
this is
dude, surgery in the US is insane. Spine surgery, dude. You go in for spine surgery, I can't, that's gotta cost what, like 100 grand
probably
at
hundreds of
least?
thousands.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's not even being facetious. That's just how much it costs. It's
Yeah.
absurd.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And then it doesn't remove the pain. And so uh yeah, so like this is the question. Like reason has led us down this road, and then it continues to lead us down this road where maybe that's not the best answer.
Well, that's the thing though, right? Because it's like it's that trick about thinking rationally, thinking logically. It's that trick that, well, if I see it and I can make those connections, it must be right then, right? Because the patterns align. And I'm sure we saw patterns in the past where every person that came in with pain, they probably scanned them. They probably noticed certain abnormalities. And, those studies were done that way. They never looked at anything beyond that, right? And
Hmm.
I think this is part of the problem. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it can lead us down interesting avenues. It's funny because even Kant says he doesn't think happiness is the goal of life. Kant doesn't. And one of the reasons why is that if God, he says, if God wanted us to be happy, he gave us like a really bad tool by giving us reason. Because reason isn't like, if you think about it, no, I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Like he said, like instincts or something would have been better aligned for happiness because reason doesn't really bring us happiness.
No,
And I think that's
it
interesting
makes
too to
us
phrase it that way.
miserable
Yeah,
most
we
of the time.
overthink things, right? We
Yeah.
we make things worse. We deny ourselves stuff. We just criticize ourselves. It's funny how
Hmm.
much, and I've always found this interesting. We put so much weight on reason for so long, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Totally important to have, obviously, but it's not the only thing, right? I mean, there's so
Hmm.
much about us besides just thinking.
So, what was the question about reason? Do you need
Oh,
reason to
is it
have a
really
good
the key
life?
to a good life? Yeah.
Ah,
Is it the key? I think you need it for sure. Like I
no,
think you need to think and you
no.
need to be
I would say
thoughtful.
no, not at all. And here's why. Maybe for a good human life.
My dog seems super
That's what I
happy,
was gonna
and he's
say.
not that smart.
That's what I was gonna say. Like dogs have the ultimate life, and according to us, they don't have reason. So I was like,
Yeah,
nah, not even a chance.
he's so happy all the time. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Like
Could you
what
imagine
that
going everywhere being as happy as a dog? Just like, oh my God, I haven't seen you for like 3 minutes. I'm just like,
Yeah, totally forgot you existed. Yeah, it's funny. It's like that's you should read Eugene Ionesco's play Rhinoceros because that's the whole thing is like
oh,
people inexplicably turn to rhinoceri and then the other people are like, well, it does kind of look nice just like not having all these problems, right? Because they don't. Animals, when we look at animals, they don't seem to have all the issues we have because they're not overthinking everything. They're
yeah.
not making it more complicated than it is. And I think it's funny, it's when you think about this question, it kind of puts into perspective that all the things we have, good or bad, like if we overemphasize them, we make them worse. I think it makes it worse. Like it needs to be used in concert with everything else that makes
Mm-hmm.
us who we are. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the hard part, I think, to getting to that good life.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill to be able to use your reason when it's necessary and to be able to let it go when it's not necessary.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I remember when I first read this, I was like, yeah, it makes sense on the one hand, because like it feels good it feels good to like to think, to like accomplish things, to like use our reason to solve problems, feels great. Like, there's always there's that pleasure there
Mm-hmm.
associated with it. But we can end up denying or forgetting about so much. Like we talk about this all the time, how like emotionally we felt very stunted for a long time because like we were never taught to like, express them and stuff. And like, so now you're like dealing with that. And it's like another hurdle, right? It's like another thing you got to
Yeah.
work through. And it's like, oh man,
Dude,
did one thing right.
I feel like the more I try to improve my life, the worse my life gets. Like I'm not sure if it's because I just have more like sensory acuity because I'm learning new things and like improving it, but I just feel like, I've been trying for so long to improve myself or to develop myself, and it's just like the more I do, the worse the more I just recognize that I'm angry, I'm moody, I'm just like,
You're talking about, yeah, for clarity, you're talking about in the context of like working through things, going through
yeah,
your past,
yeah,
figuring out like why you feel, yeah, working out your feelings, understanding your feelings. Yeah,
yep,
yeah.
yeah.
Just ignoring it was better.
Dude, yeah, I had no problems back then.
I know,
I
right? It
was
is
like a
funny, isn't
dog,
it?
the problems with everybody else.
I know. I always wonder if it's because it's like something new that I'm trying to like figure out. That's why it's so difficult. It's like I'm
Mhm.
used to like just ignoring it,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That feels natural. Yeah, it is fine. But that's also where that emphasis on reason comes in, right? Is that we were never, that failure to express emotions, to understand. I always think about this too. Like we don't teach kids how to like handle like really difficult things in life, like death and like failure. We never, it's like it blows my mind almost that we don't do this in school and stuff. Like,
Well,
you
dude,
know,
modern society is not meant for living in, clearly. Like you look at some of these what do they call them? Like non-undeveloped societies where people live in a group. So like the kids all run around together and the adults, they don't have to worry about their kids because everybody's watching everybody. And so like there was a lot less
yeah,
stress for everybody. You didn't have to worry about, your kid getting molested by somebody because if that happens, you just find a dude and murder him. And then like all these problems were not there because we lived in a society back then. But nowadays, everybody's stressed beyond their gills, and they just, yeah, it's a
yeah,
bad place.
it is funny, isn't it? Like everybody's kind of feels alone, stressed. They don't have
Hmm.
that community. Yeah, there's a lot of things that maybe aren't good. Well, it's funny too, because I think about like, they didn't need to teach about like how to deal with death and stuff back in the day because people died like kids
All the
died
time.
so often. To be an adult was rare. So like people were very familiar with death and you know, they had the local graveyard is probably walking distance. So you could
Hmm.
go visit all these people all the time and have that connection. But now it's like, I know people that like someone dies, they fly the body 17 states away, because that's where whoever else was buried a long time. And it's like,
Hmm.
it's like so disjointed almost,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, and also some of the societies had like a very strong spirituality where they believed in a
Yeah,
relation with the dead and the living. And
yeah,
yeah, so we missed that too.
interesting.
Well, the world's messed
Well, I
up.
feel like yeah, we winded around the world a little bit, but yeah, it is messed up. We agree on that. So yeah, is reason a key to good life? I would say it's important, but not the
Yeah.
main. Like it's can't you can't. I don't think it's good to emphasize one thing. You got to kind of work on all of it, maybe,
I think
or
I
maybe
think
not.
since that Descartes thing, or was it Descartes? I think therefore I am. Yeah. I think
Mhm.
since that we've gone off the deep end. You know how like things swing back and forth in a pendulum? I
Well, it was
think
like
we've
the
gone way
scientific
too
revolution.
far in the direction of
Yeah,
think therefore I am. We've become completely cerebral. So now we have all these chronic illnesses and all these problems because people spend too much time in their head and not enough time in their body. And it needs to kind of swing back.
that kind of makes sense though, right? Because the scientific revolution of that era was like what pushed us into the modern age, so we value it so much. But it's valuing really that like logical thinking, empiricist mentality, mechanistic view of the world. That's it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think that's maybe that pendulum did swing a little bit too far one direction. We got to
Hmm.
get to the center, and I don't know when it's going to happen. Maybe one day.
Yeah,
Who
I
knows?
know, right?
Well, if you like this episode, check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, subscribe. It helps out a lot. We will be back this week with another episode. Until then, though, later, Andy.
Later, Danny.